Good morning, students. I hope your preparation for mains is in full swing. Today, I will discuss one section of GS paper 2 International Relations section. You can call it India and the World section. And the first topic, India and Neighborhood. And the objective is to give you the key points and understanding how to deal with the questions of India and its neighbors. And there are some model questions also and answers here. So this PDF, we will be providing you the PDF and we hope this is useful for you. So, and this exercise is helpful for your quick revision. So the first topic is India and neighborhood relations. So first of all, any student should understand the significance of neighbors. So as per the experts of international politics, the test for efficacy, how efficient, how effective your foreign policy is how your relations are with your neighbors. Why? Because without a peaceful periphery, it will not be possible for any state to protect its national interest, be in terms of security or in terms of prosperity. Because when you open up your economy, the first destination is obviously the neighbors, and the threats, both conventional and non-conventional security threats, can arise from the neighborhood. So the test, whenever a question on the neighborhood come, you should have this in mind. At the same time, having a effective neighborhood policy is also one of the most challenging tasks, because the ancient wisdom, if I refer Kautilya, suggests that your neighbor is your natural enemy. So it is also one of the most challenging tasks to convert your enemy into your friend. At the same time, you should understand that we do not have options to ignore the neighbors, because it is said that the logic of geography is unrelenting. Fine. The logic of geography is unrelenting, and as our former Prime Minister Bajpayee was used to repeating this, that we can change our friends, but we cannot change our neighbors. We cannot change our neighbors. So, first of all, you should have a grand idea about why it is important to have good relations with the neighbors, and you must be remembering that on the occasion of the first oath taking ceremony, Prime Minister Modi invited all leaders of SAARC countries, our immediate neighborhood, and again the second time he invited the leaders of BIMSTEC, which combines the members of our immediate neighborhood as well as our extended neighborhood, that is Southeast Asia. Okay, now the importance of neighbor in context of India is all the more important. Fine, because India has aspiration to get its rightful place in Committee of Nations. For example, India has an aim to get the permanent seat in UN Security Council, and until and unless India's leadership, India's ability of conflict management, conflict resolution is not proven within its own neighborhood, it will be very difficult that India can convince the legitimacy of its leadership, of its role as a permanent member. So, there are various reasons why it is all the more important. Maybe it is not so important for Bangladesh to have good relations, but it is all the more important because our aspirations are different, our stakes are different. And now, in context of COVID-19, and especially even before, you can say, global financial crisis, when there is a slowing down, slowing economy, and because of COVID, when there is a economic disruption, and we see that globalization coming to halt and regionalization is projected as new globalization, it is very important for India to have good relationship. The ideal thing in the present situation is if SAFTA comes into existence, if not at least BIMSTEC, especially when India is out of RCEP also. So, India has an aspiration to be recognized or as a major power, and for that we need sustained economic growth, and to maintain this sustained economic growth we need the world market, and if there is a disruption in the global supply chain and countries turning protectionist and they are focusing on regional integration, at least for India it will be very, very important because the neighbors are our first market. Unfortunately, this has been captured by China, but that is a other story. But we have to understand the depth and the seriousness of this particular topic. Now, if we take the overall record of India dealing with its neighbors, we can say that the things are not so bad. So bad in the context of the amount of challenges we have. Okay, so overall record, it is up to how we look at the things. It is up to us. Fine, whether we want to see the glass half filled or half empty. It is our choice, but this half word is also important, which means there is lot which is yet to be achieved. Fine. So we can say, considering the structural or very fundamental contradictions, antagonisms, issues of disputes like border issues, water issues, involvement of superpowers, we can rate India's achievements with or India's relationship with the neighbor, if on the scale of 10, we can certainly give 5 average, not that bad. Though in the newspapers you will be reading very critical articles that our neighborhood policy is failure and India is having big challenge. I disagree, because when we make such type of assessments, we are also not understanding or we are ignoring the ground situations. We are ignoring this fact that the situations are really very challenging, especially because of the involvement of the external powers, the geopolitical and geostrategic significance of South Asia, the type of the society where still there is poverty, there is ignorance, we have limited resources, and I will definitely say that our bureaucracy, our foreign services deserve applause for the achievements they have done with a limited manpower, limited resources. India is also a developing country with colonial legacy, but let us be positive. Let us learn. The newspapers are filled with a lot of criticism, but let us learn let us appreciate even there is a small achievement, because we from outside will not be able to understand the real nitty-gritties, the real challenges. So, with the exception of Pakistan, and for which various issues are there, if the things are not that good, things are not that bad also, like Bangladesh, Bhutan, I am not saying there have not been challenges, but managing the challenges, that's fine. But whether we look at the glass half filled or half empty, we cannot say that there is nothing else to be done. Fine. So there is still, we require lot of efforts. Now, what are the structural factors? What are the structural factors which create enormous challenge or which prevent the integration of South Asia as a region. So you must be knowing, I will say first and foremost thing is the colonial legacy in each and every country. And Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore has held that one day Britishers will leave India, but I am sure that while they will leave India, they will leave such amount of dust and filth and dirt that the generations of Indians will not be able to clean that. So that is true for entire Indian subcontinent. Somehow India-Pakistan relations, you cannot overlook the legacy of partition. So if you talk from my perspective, I continue to believe in the school of thought where I feel that much of the troubles which we see in our neighborhood is because of the colonial legacy. Now, the second thing I would like to point it out is neo-colonialism or neo-imperialism. Fine. So, the neo-colonial and neo-imperialistic, let us say, ambitions of China, at present USA, continues to create the problems. So somehow the troubled relation which India has with its neighbors, including Pakistan, has to do with the imperialistic colonial ambitions of US, of China, and we will have to live with this. And we will have to wait for the moment when the people of this subcontinent are sufficiently educated. Educated doesn't mean literacy. Develop sense, develop understanding, and can understand or are able to understand the complexities of the situation, and not only the people of South Asia but even Middle East, and can think about the alternative future of South Asia, Middle East, Africa, Latin America. So for me, the colonial legacy, the neo-colonial ambitions, for example, if we talk about CPEC, one factor for CPEC is US policy to contain China. Since China is contained in the sea, only route for expansion of China is on the land, and to overcome its Malacca dilemma, China will be requiring the Gwadar port. So, for China's own imperialistic ambitions or as a counter-offensive to USA's neo-imperialistic ambitions or imperialistic ambitions, ultimately India and Pakistan relations get impacted. Now, the other obvious reasons can be the huge asymmetry in terms of size, population. Fine, so it is very natural then the domestic politics, especially in the neighborhood countries, and obviously the lack of visionary leaders who try to play India card, China card, US card, even at the cost of well-being of their own people. So lack of the visionary leader. Fine. And obviously the memory of the partition. So there are certain structural factors, geostrategic, geopolitical importance of South Asia as a region. Now, what has been our responses? So, official responses, the first grand idea is Panchashil. One of the key theme of Panchashil is non-interference in the domestic affairs of the country, respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, it continues to remain relevant, and one major factor of the poor relations or the bad relations is seen as, or at least used by the politicians of these countries, is that India's interference in their domestic affairs. So, this remains a guideline that India should stay away from the domestic politics of these neighbors, but willingly or unwillingly, we somehow get involved. So, if there will be atrocities on Tamils in Sri Lanka because we share the ethnicity, we cannot be the silent spectator. If a government is silent spectator, our social society will not be. So even if we have this policy, sometimes the situations will not permit us to continue with that policy. So the first major grand strategic framework has been Panchsheel, but the situations have been such that it was not possible, but at least this thinking we should not be rejecting altogether, just saying that it was an idealism or a complete failure. The failure happened because we could not stick to it. Okay, but yes, even for today, in case of South Asia, it is important that India remains out of the entanglements in the region. Next is Gujarat Doctrine. a very successful initiative with the concrete success, and for the makers of foreign policy of India of the present as well as future, it is an important guideline that India should not expect reciprocity. We should go for non-reciprocity, subject to the conditions. We have certain guidelines, or we draw certain red lines for our neighbors, that their land should not be used against for conducting anti-India activities. Now, the next initiative is the Neighbourhood first policy of Prime Minister Modi. We can say that to certain extent the Neighbourhood first policy has worked. At least our relations with Maldives, with Sri Lanka are not that bad. With Bangladesh, they are quite good at present. And uh, there are no illusions that, or actually, there is no easy solution to India Pakistan conflict for the structural reasons, less in India and more in Pakistan, especially because of their internal political struggles, power struggles, and same can be said about Nepal also. Fine. So, as a part of that neighborhood policy, even after ignoring SARC, India tried to revive during the time of COVID, and this neighborhood policy, neighborhood first policy, is also based on the vision of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So, this was an overview of our policy. Now, if ever asked, what should be our approach? How to deal with the neighbors? The first issue is we have to address the trust deficit. And how do you address the trust deficit? Obviously, through the regular dialogue, through addressing their concerns, helping and appreciating the developments, helping in the development of the region. Chale Saath Saath, which was a template for India-US relations, it should also be a template for our neighbors. Fulfill the commitments, for example, of infrastructure development, of lines of credit, it's very important to fulfill the commitments to develop brand India. And if in a very single line I have to tell how to deal with the neighbors, my formula will be two F's. Two F's will be firm and be flexible at the same time. So as far as our core interests are concerned, be it Kalapani, be it Kashmir, we have to be firm, but where there is a scope, let us have flexibility, let us have accommodation, and instead of having or thinking about the tactical gains, we should focus on the long-term vision. So this was a brief overview. If you keep it in mind, maybe you will be able to address the questions in your GS paper 2 answer or even in your interviews. Now I'll show you the notes which I have prepared for your revision in the exam. India and its neighborhood. Fine. A nation's destiny is linked to its neighborhood. You can remember this quote for some cherry points from PM Modi at UN General Assembly. Now, this is one practice question I will deal. India's ambition of becoming the principal power of Asia depends entirely on its ability to manage its own neighborhood. So, I have just discussed what is the importance of the neighborhood. Fine. So, you will start this answer that India has a long-term ambition to get the rightful place in the Committee of Nations, and this ambition cannot be fulfilled until and unless India is able to establish its leadership in the region itself. That is why it is said that the real test of a foreign policy of any country is how it deals with its neighbors. India's record is not that bad, but still there is lot of potential, and all governments have always realized the policy frameworks to deal with the neighbors include Panchsheel, it include Gujarat Doctrine and the Neighbourhood policy. Though there are significant achievements in terms of resolution of land boundary dispute with Bangladesh, in terms of addressing the concerns of, or you can say, maritime dispute with Sri Lanka, but there are certain pending issues which requires a sustained effort. Despite the fact we are aware of the structural constraints in improving our relations with the neighbors. In short, if a template for India dealing with the neighbor is be firm as well as be flexible. Okay. So here I have given a clue to the answer. The logic of geography is unrelenting, stable, friendly, peaceful neighborhood would help reduce the political and economic burdens on India. Challenges in neighborhood, power asymmetry, involvement of external powers, domestic politics, and the mindsets. You can also add colonial legacy plus neo colonial ambitions. Fine. Now, neighborhood means we are talking about SAARC policies of India. First is Panchsheel. For your quick revision, I have given 5 points and the year. Then Gujarat Doctrine. Main theme was unilateral accommodations. The facts are important and they give you a leverage when you write the facts in the answers. The 5 principles are given, but even if you don't remember the 5 principles, remember the non-reciprocity. The achievement is Ganga Water Agreement, Mahakali, CBMs with Pakistan, Neighborhood First policy, inviting SAARC leaders and then BIMSTEC leader, and the S. Shankar in his book The India Way mentions this policy. India needs to be generous and firm. Generosity and firmness must go hand in hand. Now, if we see Pakistan, there have been questions on India Pakistan, and the focus of questions is on terrorism. Why the focus of questions is on terrorism? Because the major concern which India has from Pakistan is terrorism. Okay, so you should be prepared with some form of answer tackling terrorism emanating from Pakistan. And in yesterday's lecture, I have discussed the previous year questions from 2019 to 2015, I suppose, and there were 2-3 questions on Pakistan and SAARC. You can get the clue from there. So, things which can be asked in exam: CPEC, you know what are India's concern because it goes through India's territory. Gilgit-Baltistan, as Pakistan attempted to change its status, and Indus Water treaty that has also been in news. So here I have given one view that given Pakistan behaves like a tributary state to the Middle Kingdom means China, and Pakistan Army's policy of needling India, bleeding India, and giving thousand cuts. New Delhi's desire to have normal relations with Pakistan are going to remain unfulfilled at least for the time for few more years. India's Pakistan policy must shift to realpolitik backed by range of powerful instruments along with creatively leveraging international environment. India should pursue the cultural and the commercial ties with the liberal constituencies, so flexibility and firmness inside Pakistan, and remain open to dialogue with the political forces that are interested in improvement of relations with Pakistan. Now, since Indus Water Treaty was in news and it was signed in 1960, there can be a question. We have prepared this question and model answer that every now and then there is a clamor in India for abrogating Indus Water Treaty as a response to Pakistan's cross-border terrorism and intransigence. Give your views that should we be abrogating or not. So in whatever form, if a question comes on Indus Water Treaty, the facts are here. So Indus Water Treaty was brokered by World Bank and it was signed in 1960 by Pandit Nehru and Ayub Khan. You should be aware of how the treaty goes for the distribution of the Indus water of three eastern rivers to India and the three western rivers to Pakistan. But Pakistan gets the greater share, and this is a unique treaty where the lower riparian state has the lower share or is at disadvantage. India was allocated about 18% of the total water. The treaty allows India to use western water of western river for limited irrigation in a manner that should not reduce the flow to Pakistan. Former President Eisenhower of former US President Eisenhower even held that it is one bright spot in a very depressing world. How the treaty works. So if any dispute arises, there is a mechanism for cooperation and information exchange. There is permanent Indus Commission, and first step is commission to hold talks. If this is not successful, go for neutral expert. If that does not work, countries can go for arbitration. So it is often suggested that against the terrorist attacks, you have to look for the soft belly of Pakistan, and Pakistan has the water deficit, and so India should be utilizing its rights on the western rivers, which India has not been able to do so because whenever we construct a dam, Pakistan goes for international arbitration, and we can, as per the treaty, if there is any practical option available, then that practical option is that if India constructs the dam and we do not allow the process of holding the talks with the commission. Now, till the talks in the commission does not happen, you cannot avail the neutral expert. So, you can block the process here itself. Number of times from Pakistan, there have been threats. For example, Hafiz Saeed said that if water will not flow, the blood will flow. So we should not be, we should not come under the blackmailing. This is a blackmailing by Pakistan. There is also a blackmailing, like if India will stop the flow of water, Pakistan can use the nuclear weapon. But we should not yield ourselves for the nuclear blackmailing by Pakistan. We have already tested their capacity in the surgical strikes, in the Balakot strike, and see if they are going to use the nuclear weapon. They can use for any reason. And Pakistan, as a state where the safety and security of the nuclear weapons is always a big question mark, there is always a possibility of the non-state actors acquiring the nuclear weapons. So we have to be ready for the worst case scenario emerging from Pakistan. That can happen even if we use this tactic or not. So there is no harm if we think that this can create some pressure point. So this is how you can manage this. So India's generosity, abrogation of the treaty. Can treaty be restructured? No, but there are arguments. Some people believe that no, it is not difficult, and this will create wrong impression because the common man in Pakistan will be affected. This will further increase the trust deficit between India and Pakistan. It may alienate even the lobby which looks for good relations with India, and abrogation can have negative impact on our relations with the other neighbors. But at times it is said that no, but sometimes maybe this is one of the options available to India. Now, with respect to Nepal, there is a general issue, like India always found it quite troublesome in dealing with Nepal, and the reason is many, not one. And Nepal is very important for India's security, and somehow the political class in Nepal, they have understood India's insecurity in context of China, and they try to use that card. So in this context, let us be firm, but we should not go for extreme measures like blockade, etc., which allows the politicians to destroy the good image, or to destroy or to harm the image of India in the among the people of Nepal. So even if our government to government relations have not been that great, India Nepal people to people relationship, society to society relationship continues to be strong. So let us not be doing any further damage. Let us dehyphenate Nepal, India, China. Let us dehyphenate Nepal, China. Let's have an independent policy for Nepal. Our Nepal policy is so much, or you can say, is actually a subset of our China policy. So we should be more confident in dealing with Nepal. We should not allow Nepali politicians to deal with our sensitivity. And most importantly, it is important that India stay away from their internal politics. India should not do anything which damages India's you can say India's image. And it is normally said that one of the uh, major weakness of India's Nepal policy is that we have not conducted it very professionally. India's Nepal politics becomes a family affair, and it should not be such. Now, from exams point of view, the question can come on Kala Pani. You should know what is where is this Kala Pani. So Kala Pani is a triangular piece of land at a tri-junction of India, Nepal, China, or while going to Mansarovar in that road, and it has its strategic importance, especially after 1962 war. We have understood the strategic importance, and Indian military has a post in Kalapani region, and Nepal, or initially China was pushing Nepal that Nepal should assert its sovereignty on this region. And now, because our relations have also been impacted, so multiple reasons only besides China factor, that Nepal has always asserted its claim on Kalapani, and recently we have seen that Nepal has objected the construction of the road and declared Kalapani as its territory, made changes in its constitution, and the major problem emerges because of the difference in the interpretation. So normally that the border between India and Nepal is Kalapani, fine, or sorry, the border between India and Nepal is determined by the river Kali, and the territory east of river Kali belongs to Nepal, west of river Kali belongs to India, and Kalapani is at the tri-junction, and there is a difference in the interpretation from where actually the Kali starts. So this tri-junction, and according to Nepal, it starts from here, the Lipu Lake or Limpi Dhuria, and this tributary, and Nepal consider even this tributary as a part of Kalapani, but India says that only from Kalapani river Kali starts. So ideally this territory, or this territory should be a part of India. So what is the way forward? there is a mechanism for resolution of the dispute. If any solution comes, it can come only by the dialogue, plus there has to be genuine desire to resolve that conflict, and both the politicians or both the countries should not be make it a political issue to gain leverage in the domestic politics, especially as far as the politicians of Nepal are concerned. And India can think of some creative solution. The creative solution can be like what China, suppose we accept this as the territory, but India should get this territory on a permanent lease from Nepal. So look for the solution, or we can offer some other territory, or we can stick firmly to the stand that this belongs to India's territory. So I hope this information, here the fact is why the recent dispute is started. The recent dispute is started with the inauguration of 80-kilometer long road in Himalaya at Lipu Lake Pass. Why the Lipu Lake Pass was inaugurated? So according to Government of India, this will make the road for the pilgrims fast easier. Now, what is the Kala Pani dispute? The dispute is over the historical accuracy of geographical territory between the two neighbors. The bone of contention is Kala Pani Limpi Dhura Lipu Lake Tri Junction, and Nepal consider it as a part of its own territory. Nepal even consider entire Uttarakhand as its own Sudur Paschim Pradesh. India says it is a part of its Pithoragarh district, and this is like what are the official records. Now the major theme is that Nepal claims that the east of river Kali starts at the source of the river. The source of the river is near Limpi Dhora, which is higher in altitude than rest of the river. And this like Nepal says that the source of river for from India's, this will be the source, but Nepal says source should be from Limpi Dhora. And reasons behind the recent friction: the failure of India's strategic thinking, or Nepal using the China card, and Nepal putting severe trouble for India's infrastructure and connectivity plans, internal politics of Nepal, India's decision with respect to Article 370 35A. So multiple factors you can see, and this is the mechanism available. You should be aware of. There is a joint border inspection mechanism. Right now there is a joint technical level boundary committee. Way forward, India should not lower its strategic guard, be firm here, take care of Nepal's, don't take and do not take Nepal's loyalty for granted, as Nepal is adhering to the larger designs of China. Now, India's Nepal policy. So, I have already given the brief of that, and the thing is, India should reject Nepalese attempt to reverse the history, and we have, if we do not have that much exemplary interstate relations, we have unique people to people partnership. Now Bhutan India so far has the most, you can say, the so far the best relations with Bhutan, but it is believed that with democracy coming to Bhutan and with Chinese ambitions rising in Himalaya, the winds of change are already blowing. The winds of change have started blowing, and at times we get enough indications that certain sections of Bhutani politicians, they would like to establish the regular diplomatic relations with China, and so far India has been able to stop. China has big pockets, and India should be prepared for the new equation that may be emerging from the region. So the question, this is the question, that India's strong relations with Bhutan is being challenged by the regional security dynamics. So regional security dynamics is what? China making all possible efforts to enter in India's neighborhood. Fine. So the winds of change have started blowing. Some key facts is which will help you in writing the answer, that in 1949 we have signed a treaty of friendship and peace, which actually puts Bhutan's foreign policy under India's guidance, but it was amended in 2007, looking at Bhutan's sensitivity. Then Prime Minister Modi visited twice, then came Doklam crisis. 2020, the satellite images show several villages have come up in the tri-junction between India, Bhutan and China, and the move follows the upgrading and construction of Chinese military facilities. So it is also suggested that India should be mindful of their sensitivity. India is net security provider to Bhutan, military, economic and infrastructure. India's challenge, though Bhutan and China do not have the official relations, yet China is continuing its soft power offensives in Bhutan, and as China is developing the infrastructure, India is losing the geographical advantage. Road ahead, continue the developmental aid, ensure that Indian projects are inclusive and they help in employment generation in Bhutan, respect Bhutanese sensitivities with respect to ecology, environment in BBIN, stay out of domestic politics. And Prime Minister Modi's statement that India stands with Bhutan in its need and in its requirement will always be a priority. Now, Bangladesh. So, you know that Bangladesh was earlier known as very underrated neighbor. So, Bangladesh as a country is situated within your country, very important for India's access to Northeast, to check Chinese ambitions in Chumbi Valley or in India's Chicken Neck area, for India's ambitions in Southeast Asia, Look East policy, BIMSTEC, many things. And since Sheikh Hasina government is there, we do have a good relations, and we have successfully resolved many issues, including the land boundary and maritime boundary, but new issues are emerging which may spoil the relation. That includes Rohingya issue, India's Citizenship Amendment Act, NRC, and still we have not been able to conclude an agreement on Tista, and recently it is reported that some Bangladeshi personals have been shot at the border. So border management, these are some new concerns, and we should not ignore that fact that despite India's role in Bangladesh's freedom movement, otherwise also in its capacity building, India is yet to have across the consensus in its favor across the political sections of Pakistan, of Bangladesh, and we we have so far good relations only with the Awami League and not with the other political factions, whereas both the two parties, they have a consensus over strengthening their relationship with China, and China is a major supplier of the military supplier to Bangladesh. So we have to see how we can reduce the trust deficit, and let us ensure that the new and unnecessary issues do not emerge. And one concern is the increasing radicalization also of the government, of the society of Bangladesh. Bangladesh will be celebrating the 50 years of its liberation, and Prime Minister Modi has been invited, but certain groups in Bangladesh are also opposing. So these are some recent developments. So for your convenience, we have just summed it up. So a virtual summit took place where Prime Minister Modi held that Bangladesh is a major pillar of India's neighborhood. Sheikh Hasina has invited Modi to celebrate the 50th anniversary. Haldibari Chilahati rail link has been revived. The current issues, violence at border, CAA, NRC, Rohingya issue, Tista water sharing issue, the radicalization of Bangladeshi society, like Hifazat-e-Islam, a radical group, is opposing the visit of Prime Minister Modi. The certain facts that Bangladesh is India's single largest trading partner. New Delhi should take. What is the suggestion? The suggestion is New Delhi has to take the broader view of the changing scenario and the growing competition in South Asia and reach to Dhaka with an open mind. Now, next is Sri Lanka. We already know that Sri Lanka had played Chinese card and India lost Hambantota, and when initially Rajpaksha was in power, he had not solved the Tamil question, and he shifted Sri Lanka decisively towards China. But with the change of government in Sri Lanka and India's engagements with Sri Lanka, things have changed. And now again, when the Rajpaksha brothers are in power, though officially they have held that India is their relative and others are their neighbors, yet we cannot take their words for granted, and India is making its attempt to keep uh, Sri Lanka under its influence. Recently, Ajit Doval has visited for revival of the trilateral India, Sri Lanka, Maldives trilateral security dialogue. Sri Lanka also has an important position in terms of India's vision of Indo-Pacific. Some troublesome issues remain fishermen issue. So these are certain concerns. Issues: the ethnic conflicts in Sri Lanka, fishermen issue, and influence of China. Recent development is Rajpaksha's visit, Jaishankar and Ajit Doval's visit, and the virtual summit. The focus is on maritime cooperation to counter Chinese influence. Then India is also working in partnership with Japan for development of Eastern Terminal Container Port. Fine. Now we can do it together, and that is Maldives. And with the change of guard in Maldives, there is a warming up of the relation. And again, Ajit Doval has visited Maldives. China is expanding its footprints. India is also in race. If China has gone for giving $200 million for bridge, India has also announced. And then we are also involved in Greater Malay Collectivity projects. So now next is India's policy with respect to Afghanistan. Fine. So you all are aware of the importance of Afghanistan for India. Fine. First of all, geostrategic. Security related issues, because when there was a Taliban government in Afghanistan, it became a safe haven for Pakistan led terrorists to conduct anti India activities. Second thing is that if there is a war between India and Pakistan in Kashmir, we can shift. If we have friendly government in Afghanistan, we can shift the focus of the war in Afghanistan. We can open the second front against Pakistan in Afghanistan. And if we go by Kautilya's wisdom, your neighbor is your natural enemy, and your neighbor's neighbor is your natural friend. So by that location, Afghanistan is our natural ally. If there is a independent government in Afghanistan, and because Pakistan understands this fact, Pakistan wants Afghanistan and Pakistan becomes a single strategic space and deny India the strategic depth, and Pakistan wants a strategic depth in this region. So geostrategic importance, obviously geoeconomic importance is that Afghanistan is at the crossroad of major trade routes, important for India's access to Central Asia. It has huge deposit of minerals, iron, copper, even the deposits of oil, but minerals are very, very important market for Indian goods. So, and geopolitical importance in terms of building India's soft power and South-South cooperation. And historically, India had good relations with Afghanistan till the Islamic Revolution happened there and internal civil war started, and we had a very bad and unfortunate memory of hijacking of IC-814 when there was a Taliban regime. And because Taliban is a proxy of Pakistan, we are not happy with Taliban, or we never wanted that Taliban should come back to power. So today, India faces a huge dilemma in Afghanistan, and we should always remember that India has always faced the security threat from the West, especially all invasions took place from the Khyber Pass. So, Afghanistan is very, very critical to India's security. Now, what is the recent development? The recent development is USA, which is involved in the war since 2001, is war weary, and USA has agreed to enter into the peace treaty with Taliban. And our basic problem is that why Taliban has won, why a non-state actor has not been, or it has not been possible for US to defeat. One important factor is that it has been supported by Pakistan, and because it is supported by Pakistan, it is supported by China. Because supported by China, it is supported by Russia. It is also supported by Iran. So Taliban coming to power is like Pakistan coming to power and have been making Afghanistan and Pakistan a single geostrategic space and taking away the advantage from India. So anyway, so what is happening is the peace talks between USA and Taliban in Doha, where it has been agreed that by 2001 April, foreign forces will be out, and without any substantive arrangement of like post US forces leaves, what will be the scenario. So there is a big possibility that it can again lapse into the civil war. But another concern for India is the talks between the government of Afghanistan, the representatives, and Taliban also started, which we can say the intra-Afghan talks. So unfortunately, intra-Afghan talks are not Afghan owned, they are not Afghan led, which was our template. Rather, they are Pakistan China owned and Pakistan led. And considering Chinese enmity towards India and Pakistan's insecurity towards India, obviously the outcome may not be in India's favor, and there is a huge possibility that somehow there will be integration of Taliban in the government, and once the foreign forces leave, Taliban will establish itself fully in power, and whatever happened to the previous Mujahideen government, that it had to take refuge in the northern areas or form northern alliance, so history is going to repeat there. So what are the challenge for India is possibility of Taliban joining Afghan government, some type of negotiation. US is firm in leaving another civil war, either civil war or Taliban establishing its full control. So it's a catch 22 situation for India. Neither this is in our interest, not this is in our interest. So the big question is, what are India's options? So obviously the India's options at present is engagement with the regional powers like, at least here Russia is important, maybe Iran if possible, China and Pakistan. In present situation, no. Then strengthening its relationship with Central Asia. We have seen Uzbekistan, India, Iran, trilateral. So because once it becomes AFPAK, it is very, very important that India has presence in Central Asia, and the importance of Iran again increases and Russia increases. Now the big question is, what has been India's policy so far, especially since 2001? So we have gone for soft power and no military footprints. Though in India there has been a lot of debate that India should have its military footprints in the region, but many of Indian analysts, former ambassadors who have experience in working in Afghanistan, they believe that there are logistical issues and it may not be very right option for India to go for the military footprints. So up till now, India has always avoided engagement with Taliban because our policy is that the talk and terror cannot go together, and Indian civilians, officials, they have suffered, engineers and all, they have also suffered the casualty by certain sections of Taliban forces. So especially the Haqqani network, and India was never in support of talking to Taliban. Neither international community should seek engagement with that, but since it has not been working and India is seen as the only country left out because rest of the countries are all talking with Taliban, so India is changing its policy because we should also have a channel of communication open. So India was invited by Russia. We have made non-official participation in the Moscow format, and then we have also participated in the Doha talks also. So now it seems that we may not be completely against the communication with Taliban. In the past, some leaders of Taliban, they have also held that they are not against India, and they have expressed the positive statements about India. But we can say that it is, we should not be thinking that Taliban has changed and they are really interested in their relationship with India. So far, Taliban is under the control of Pakistan, and without Pakistan's support, Taliban cannot come. So we should not get, in a way, we should not get relaxed when we see that Taliban is giving some positive narratives about India, because again, the existing situations are very different, and that may be just a Taliban's effort so that they can come to power easily and there is less and less opposition. So we have to decode, we have to deconstruct the, even any positive statements come from the Taliban leadership. Anyway, we have few cards. It's good thing the government has started a channel of communication, and because things are changing, our diplomacy also has to change. But India has to work, India has to work on its internal security front, and India needs again a creative thinking how to manage the situations. So now let us see a quick review. So importance of, so the question here is, in the changing strategic environment in Afghanistan suggest how India should protect its vital interests. So importance of Afghanistan for India. Afghanistan is geostrategically too critical for India for its reach to Central Asia, counterbalancing China-Pakistan axis, and it has huge deposits of energy, raw materials. India's policy so far, we have centered on the needs of people of Afghanistan, worked with elected government, constructed dams, parliament building, road networks, medical facilities. We have not displayed any affinity towards Taliban up till now. Indians are also among the largest trainers to Afghan forces, and we have displayed that it should be Afghan led and Afghan owned solutions. So the current development, there are two parallel processes, US Taliban and second is intra Taliban negotiations. Now India's participation. So India has participated in Doha talks. P. Kumaran represented the country, and India said that India has conveyed its support for the people of Afghanistan in their pursuit for peace, and held that the process should remain inclusive. India has sent earlier the two former diplomats Amar Sinha and TCA Raghavan in a non-official capacity in a conference in Moscow. At the opening session of intra-Afghan talks at Doha, S. Jaishankar held that peace process must be Afghan-led, Afghan-owned and Afghan-controlled. Thus, India has evolved from its earlier hand-off approach to Taliban towards the beginning of engagement. Now, what is a way forward? India is a major stakeholder in peace and stability in the region. We have invested $3 billion. We are keenly observing the development. India is carving a constructive role. India cannot be a mute spectator. Work with the like-minded countries. Road to peace in Afghanistan is long, uncertain, and thus India has to make tough choices. These are the words, if you will use, this can help you because nothing concrete you can propose. Fine, even the government is still not, is it still facing a policy dilemma in Afghanistan. So for the purpose of exam, you can use these words and just show your approach. India needs broad-based, comprehensive strategy that allows it to balance its interaction with all parties in Afghanistan conflict. Fine. So now there is always a possibility to ask question on SARC, and you understand that this has become all the more important because globalization is in retreat, and scholars suggest that regionalization will be a new globalization, and to sustain the momentum of our economic growth we need the regional integration in South Asia. Besides these, also one of the dangerous place because of the nuclear weapons, poverty, disasters, so many things. So unfortunately, the SARC process has not gained momentum. I have seen repeated questions on SARC, so prepare SARC and always remember the fundamental problem is the trust deficit between India and Pakistan. And since the Uri and Pulwama, the summit was due in Islamabad, but because of India that Pakistan should take something concrete, we have been boycotting it, and India has been following the policy of you can say isolation of Pakistan. So the summit has not happened, and other smaller countries like Nepal, they have also expressed the concern. The other reasons why SARC is least integrated in terms of trade, like only 5% is intra-regional trade. On the other hand, if we see in Asia, Southeast Asia, their 27% trade is internal. If we see Europe, 60% trade is internal. So least integrated, despite the fact there is poverty, malnutrition, and there is an urgent need. And then India's policy has been to leave SARC and to focus on BIMSTEC, though the scholars believe that there are many practical issues even in BIMSTEC, and India cannot leave SARC for long, and there has been recently in context of COVID attempt to revive SARC. So I will quickly give you the glance of the facts, and yesterday I have discussed the previous year question. I hope that will be useful. So the SARC introduction and then the recent push for rejuvenation. So India has made attempt for revival of SARC when PM took the bold initiative to engage with the SARC colleagues for working on a strategy to deal with COVID. Modi's initiative may not succeed in eradicating the epidemic considering the huge population, but has a promise to bring SARC back to life. Pakistan was on board, welcomed Modi's proposal for emergency fund with India's contribution of $10 million. SARC leaders agreed to pool the best practices, share experiences, coordinate efforts in fighting the virus. India's main purpose is that our message was loud and clear. India is ready to promote the global good. However, India believes that However, it is believed that the reason for revival of SAARC is our failure to isolate Pakistan. Fine, India has not been participating since 2016. Now, BIMSTEC, the facts about BIMSTEC challenges reactive regionalism. So, BIMSTEC की खुद का internal motivation नहीं है because SAARC is not coming up, so shifting to regionalism, domestic politics, lack of political will, intra-regional investment is negligible, intra-regional lack of good infrastructure. All BIMSTEC members are part of BRI except India and Bhutan, and institutional weakness, but future seems to be bright, and you can say that BIMSTEC is at the threshold. Now this is just some data about China in South Asia. So Chinese investment is around 150 billion, largest arms supplier to Bangladesh, then connectivity projects, and China has already replaced India as a major trading partner. Fine. Next, China is making its inroads in the region through the investments, loans and grants. Chinese investment is concentrated in hard infrastructure. Beyond infrastructure, China is also investing in the financial systems. China has also this military partnership with these countries. Beijing is helping the strengthening of Navy of Pakistan. South Asian countries view China as a fallback option. The threat of Chinese presence in South Asia can be tackled more effectively if India changes course in its dealings. So this is some data of China's active involvement and infrastructure projects in the region. So I hope this discussion has been helpful to you. Thank you.